Welcome back to another episode of the Education Exchange. I'm Sarah Clausen, Public Relations and Marketing Specialist for the Tolleson Union High School District. Joining me today is Superintendent Jeremy Calles. We're going to break down the lease-back agreement with the Isaac Elementary School District. Welcome, Mr. Calles.
Thank you. It's good to be here.
Okay, so first of all, let's get into the history. Isaac Elementary School District is located where? Are they partners with our district? Tell us a little bit just about who they are.
So Isaac Elementary School District has about 12 schools. They're over there around 35th Avenue and McDowell. So they're here in the West Valley portion of Phoenix. And no, they do not feed into Tolleson Union High School District.
Okay. And so this past year, through audits of the state, it was learned that they were in some financial struggles, some problems. Do you know what resulted in their need for financial assistance?
Yes. And before I get into that, I'm going to tell you a story.
Okay.
All right. So about a year ago, I had a refrigerator. We just bought a new refrigerator. I had to get it into the house, but I had to get it up a little bit and lift it up to get into the house. So I did, wrapped around it, lifted it into the house. I got the refrigerator in. I also got a hernia out of the deal. So had that repaired and everything else. Fast forward to just a couple months ago. My wife and I are at Costco. And so I'm at Costco and we're buying some workout equipment, one of those big Nautilus machines, right? Weighs over 300 pounds for, everything that's in the box. Got one of those nice little flat carts that they have over there. Mm-hmm. It's no trouble pushing it off the top row and dropping it onto the flat cart. I got that just fine. I go through, pay for it at the cashier. Nobody asked if I needed any help. I'm way too prideful to ask for help. So I'm good. Between the person who helps with the cards, the cashier, everybody's thinking like he looks like he's got it. Guess we're fine. I'm rolling out. I get out to the truck, drop the tailgate, and I lift half of it onto the tailgate, and I'm thinking I'm just gonna either flip it or pull up and push the other side. Well, when I lift the first half onto the tailgate, I just hear all the contents of the box shift. So all the weight is just down onto the bottom of the box right now, and the bottom piece that I need to still lift up. And I go to lift it, and I'm having flashbacks to that refrigerator.
I would too.
So, I'm sitting there, and the only other person with me is my wife, who is, as petite as she is beautiful. And chances of her being able to grab that other side are not looking good.
Okay.
Right? I'm going to give you 3 possible endings that I want you to guess which one happened.
Okay, I'll do my best.
All right, so first option, I told her, that's all right, suck it up, Buttercup, grab that half. I'm going to grab the other half. We're going to make this work anyway. Option 2, we decided just to leave it behind. Forget it. I guess we weren't meant to have it. Or option 3, a stranger who saw the issue that I was dealing with intervened. He came over. He grabbed one half. I grabbed one half. And in a few seconds, we have it in the back of the truck. Which one of those do you think actually happened?
I'm going to go with option 3.
Yes, the very logical option. The very thing that we would expect for anyone in that type of a situation.
It's a good Samaritan.
And yet, when we talk about the Isaac deal, everybody cannot get around the fact that was the obvious thing to do, the right thing to do. Instead, they want to look for what was the angle, the why. Mm-hmm. With that being said, I'll give you a little bit of the background on the Isaac deal.
Okay.
Obviously, the team there also had some of their own pride for some time. It took a while before they reached out for help. I actually got the phone call from their superintendent the Friday before the Tuesday meeting when they went into receivership. Not a lot of time to work with. Calls me up in the morning. It's like, Jeremy, I'm in a real financial pinch. I know you're great at this stuff. Like, can you take a look and help? It's like, Mario, absolutely. I go ahead. I pull up I pull up all their books and everything else, and I'm looking things over. I call them back after about an hour, and I'm like, Mario, I'm not going to sugarcoat it for you. This is absolutely the worst thing I've ever seen.
It was bad.
That being said, yes, I can fix it. I'm going to have to do a few things. For starters, I'm going to need to run a lease purchase because I have to infuse some cash just to get you back above water again. And I went through the details of my plan with Mario. He was completely on board. He was ready to present it with his board. He was setting up time for me to meet with his board. He calls me back after a couple hours, and he's like, I just got the notice. They're taking us into receivership on Tuesday. I let him know, if you go into receivership, I won't be able to work with you anymore. Control of the district now goes to the receiver.
So just to clarify, the work that you were doing before that phone call was on consulting terms.
Yes. So I do consult with, 60 to 70 school districts across the state. A lot of it on financial matters, automations. I have a bunch of sub-consultants that work for me. So I do a lot of work around Arizona. And when he originally reached out to me, it was in the capacity of a consultant.
Okay. And you yourself have the financial history and knowledge and skills because you were our CFO. So you have that information or that background and skill as well.
Yes. So I've been around school finance for 2 decades now, originally starting with the Department of Education. I used to calculate everybody's budget capacity and numbers and tell all the different districts what they're getting paid, how much budget capacity they're receiving, and walk them through it and how those calculations work. I used to work with the legislature and help them with their bills. So when they were writing bills, I could tell them if they were going to actually do what they were hoping they would do. So I have all that background from the past couple of decades, and I've served on statewide committees and things of that nature before. So between that and the consulting, yes, they know I'm pretty knowledgeable in that area.
Yeah. Okay.
All right. So I was set up to help Mario, and I told him, we're going to have to go through this state board meeting. Let me see what they decide to do. If they're willing to give you a little bit more time, I can fix it. It takes 6 weeks to close one of these deals with a bank. I'm like, they at least have to give you 2 months for me to have a shot. I go, let me present, and we'll see. We'll go from there. Go into the meeting. The first, 90% of the meeting was everybody taking turns to tell the Isaac School District how bad their situation was. I got to speak towards the end, and I said, it seems like everybody has a good understanding of the problem, so I'm going to pass that slide. Let's talk about solutions. I brought forward some ideas. No one was receptive to the ideas. In fact, I faced personal attacks for even trying to present solutions to the problem. So they voted to put Isaac in a receivership. And after that, I let Mario know. I'm like, hey, I'm not giving up on your school district. But now my conversation is with the receiver, and if the receiver wants to have that conversation.
So when a school district is put into receivership, explain what that means exactly.
When a school district gets put into receivership, it means that there is no more local control. Your superintendent has no authority. Your governing board has no authority. The voters, everybody else is all ruled out at that point. It is that receiver who then has control on all the decision-making for anything that's financially related, which basically you could make a justification on anything we do somehow has a dollar attached to it. So you completely give up control at that point to a receiver.
Okay, so they are paying salaries, they're paying utilities, they're paying everything, right, of that school district.
Well, it's not that the receiver is paying. The school district is still paying the bill.
They just get to say, yes,
but
you can pay for this.
The receiver is the one who signs off on it and says, go ahead and cut that check.
Okay.
So including, the payment back to the receiver, because the receiver also has to get paid for their work. So the receiver is the one who's saying, yes, this is how much you're going to pay me for the work I need to do for you.
Okay.
So they're in receivership. I'm reaching out to the receiver, letting them know what, my plan would be if I was in their shoes and trying to solve this problem. And at the time, they were more concerned with, we don't know if we're going to be able to make another payroll. And very quickly, the county treasurer let them know that they're not. and then you had teachers who were then working without a paycheck, all their staff working without a paycheck and without any promise of when they would ever receive a paycheck. So at that point, I was like, okay, well, you don't even have the 6 weeks, not even as the receiver. They're not going to give you any runway to fix the problem. And prior to all this happening, I had meetings where, a lot of us school districts get together, and I keep telling everyone, look, they have been trying to privatize education for 30 years now. We have never been closer to the edge when it comes to privatizing education. And Isaac is going to be that test case because they have a path now that they can dissolve a school district. If you no longer release payroll, it's just a matter of time before even the best-hearted people are going to tell you, I have to worry about feeding my own family. I cannot keep working for you for free. And when they all stop showing up to work, you don't have a school district anymore. And when the students realize that their teacher just stopped coming in, they're going to stop coming in. The parents are going to start to pull out of the schools. The school district is just going to dissolve.
It's going to be panic.
Yeah. So, and for the state, it's like, well, they can take an ESA, they can go to a neighboring school district, they can sign up to a charter, and the district could dissolve. Right? We haven't seen that. Statute doesn't provide for that. There isn't a course for that, but this was going to be the test case if nothing else changed. One bill was drafted, and the state's solution to the problem was to cover one payroll in exchange for all the governing board members being fired and some other strings attached. And that's just to get you through one payroll. That buys you 2 more weeks of school, and we had a long way left in the school year. So at that point, me being that good Samaritan, watching all of this from the side, I knew that we had to turn the money around fast to get everybody paid again.
How much were they in debt? What kind of money are you talking about?
Well, it gets tricky with school finance because there's cash and there's budget capacity. It's not a common approach across all states because normally when you think of I have cash in the bank, like that means I have ability to spend, but that's not the way it works with Arizona school finance. On some of our funds that are budget controlled, if you have $100 of cash in the bank, but you have $20 of budget capacity, you can spend $20. You can't touch the other 80. If you have no cash in the bank and you have $20 of budget capacity, you can spend $20. The cash doesn't control your spending authority. And throughout everything that has been coming out, they have been intermingling the two as if they are one and the same when they're not. And so if you listen to the statements about TANs, which are tax anticipation notes, and some of the other things that have been thrown on here, some of those items are just cash items. They're not budget capacity items. But when you look at all in with all the different issues, it was arguments being made that it was north of $20 million. So I tell the receiver, I'm like, I see where your options are at right now. Do you want to cover one payroll and figure out how you're going to pull off a miracle off one payroll when you can't even get a bank to come help you in 2 weeks? Or I have another path for you. What if Tolleson lends you the money? And he was open to it because he was running out of options. And then at that point, I said, let me talk to my governing board and let me get you to go ahead and first close out that PO. I've never billed you guys, but I know people are people, and I know one of the first things I'm going to hear is about the conflict of interest. So I need you to close out that PO. I will not be billing on that PO now that we're going down this path of considering Tolleson Union as the option for Isaac. And I had that conversation with my governing board, and obviously laying out the pros and cons. No one was expecting or under some delusion that everybody was going to be happy with us for doing this. We understood that some people were going to be upset, some people were going to be very happy, and taking that into account, we made what was the best decision to make. When you think of all the people involved, when you think of those teachers, when you think of those students, those families that were being impacted, the best thing to do was to be that good Samaritan and help give a hand.
Isaac is not the only school district in the state who's come under receivership. In other cases, how did school districts resolve their financial problems and get their teachers paid if another school district wasn't leasing money?
So, with all of the other districts, so the way statute reads, when you have an over expenditure, you can recoup that over expenditure. Either the next year you just reduce your budget by whatever the over expenditure is, or in a case of hardship, you send a letter to the Department of Education and you ask and you say, I'm actually going to need 2 years to pay this back, and they'll spread it over the 2 years. It doesn't even have to be evenly spread over the 2 years. You can make it back heavy. That's the way statute reads right now. In many cases, so we have some receiverships that, again, not quite as bad as Isaac, but still pretty bad. We've seen special legislation where they ask if it can be spread over 5 years. They're like, can we make the repayment over 5 years? We can come up with a plan on how we're going to get there, but we definitely can't get there in 2. We're going to need 5. And the legislature in the past has approved that. This is the first time that we are going down the path, and there are bills that are going to further us down the path where it's now, if you were so much as one of the bills being considered, if you're so much as $50,000 overexpended, that's it. Instant receivership. You lose control of your district. Don't use a fiscal crisis team. Want to just jump straight to receivership. So we're seeing a much heavier hammer come down now, where it's like there is no tolerance for a mistake. The moment we see a mistake, the district gets taken over.
Okay. So this came to a governing board meeting, this proposal on an agenda item. What was the initial agenda item details?
So originally, when I was first looking at helping Isaac, the plan was going to be for a 12-year deal. So statute allows for 20-year leases, but banks usually have appetite for about a 12 to 15-year lease for this type of a scenario. And so 12 years was the original consideration. Best case scenario when we were looking at banks was that maybe if we were lucky, we could get Isaac a 6% interest rate. And so, well, since we're going to do it through Tolleson, we said we can match the best case scenario, 12 years, 6% interest. The moment, we kicked that around with a bunch of different attorneys. Somebody brought up, well, there's the one provision, it's outside of Title 15, but there is a provision that says that when it's an investment between, municipalities like this, that you're actually capped at 5 years. The moment they even started to mention it, I remembered, because in my previous school district, at Kyrene Elementary School District, I did a private placement with the county. So we have seen other municipalities work together on deals before. This is just the first one where it's school district to school district. I did a placement with the county, and I had to hold that to 5 years because we were privately placing with the county, and it was because it was municipality to municipality. So I've come across that restriction before. So the moment they started to say that, I'm like, you're absolutely right. I remember that now. We've got to redo this deal. It's got to be a 5-year deal. We kept the original terms and just ballooned the 5th year, still 6%, but now a 5-year deal instead of a 12-year deal.
At that particular governing board meeting, there was a lot of public comment on both sides of accepting this agreement and moving forward. Some people asking for more time. They thought there were legal ramifications. They just wanted to make sure that all of the boxes were checked and that this was legally a good thing, a good deal. People from Isaac came out and they thanked us and said, this is what good neighbors do. I live in Tolleson, but I work there. So there's like a bleed between districts, even though it's not a feeder district of ours. Some people said, we are profiting because of that interest rate. Why is it good stewardship to create a deal with someone who's already financially hurting to make money off of that situation? So lots of different things came up during that meeting. In the end, it was approved. But for some of those different arguments, can we address a few of those?
Absolutely.
Can we start with the urgency? You have touched on it a little bit. People asking for just more time.
And we're going to keep sticking with the same analogy. So imagine that Good Samaritan who helps me lift that box into the back of the tailgate. If his response to me was, you know what, the item looks pretty heavy. Do you mind if I come back next week? Just wait here for a week. I'll be back next week. I'll see you still standing here with the box. And maybe then by next week, after I've had some time to kick this around, I'll decide if I want to help you lift that into the back of the truck.
What if that same person said, let me go get a Costco employee. Just hang on here and we'll get 2 or 3 people to help you lift this box. It's not going to wait for weeks or months, but maybe 5 minutes, maybe 10 minutes.
Yes, and I had reached out to others asking for support for Isaac, letting him know like somebody has to step in, somebody has to do something. We saw what was moving through downtown. So that was the state's version of a solution. It was going to be too little and definitely too late. There would be, by the time they would actually get that through, appropriated, transferred over to Isaac, and then get a paycheck cut out to the staff, like there wasn't going to be any staff to cut a paycheck to. They would have been gone. There was no other district, and not only no other district stepping up, but many of them couldn't. We're in a rare situation where Tolleson is the only one who was probably financially able to pull this off. The county was obviously out. They were already at their wits' end with Isaac. They could have, very easily said, we're going to go ahead and keep releasing the payroll. We're going to give you a couple of months to work with the bank and figure this out. The banks cannot turn money over that fast. They need at least 6 weeks. 6 weeks, the employees were not going to stick there for 6 weeks. So we looked at many different options. Nobody was coming anytime soon. So now that same scenario, picture it that the store is closed. The parking lot is empty. This is the last person who's standing in the parking lot who can come over and help me. If he was to then say, let me think about it for a week, I'm just assuming that I don't have any help. Some of the other arguments, well, they're not our feeder school. They're not from our neighborhood. I'll tell you, when he stopped to help me lift that box, at no point in time did he ask me which zip code I was born in, what zip code I'm currently living in, what zip code I went to school in, what zip code I'm going to live in the future. He didn't even ask me my name. He didn't ask me my political affiliation. He didn't ask me any questions. He just saw that I needed help, and he helped me.
None of that mattered.
None of that matters. For the people who do live within Tolleson, there is a fiduciary responsibility to take care of our own district, which is why there was an interest rate. Without the interest rate, it would have been a gift of public funds. So we had to charge a reasonable interest rate. It had to be something that realistically would be possible for somebody to get out on the market. And 6%, I think anybody who's been shopping for a home lately or trying to do any other major financing knows that 6%, if somebody tells you they're giving you an interest rate of 6%, you know that you're happy. At the same time, that's not a gift, because we all reminisce to when we can get a 2% loan.
Right.
So 6% was a reasonable interest rate to put onto the loan.
Okay. I think that was the majority of the comments that did come out. After the agenda item was approved, there have been other just rumblings and, still trying to pick apart this deal. The Attorney General received notice from a member of the House of Representatives questioning our governing board, knowing that they don't have the right to govern other school districts and property and such. Can you explain that a little better than I am, and if there's truth to it?
Absolutely. So again, I had this picked apart by a dozen lawyers, and I was keeping my board president informed the whole time. So I want to thank my governing board, who are courageous enough to vote for the item, and a special thanks to my governing board president, because I know she had to step out the most in front of the item. But yes, I did cross the T's and dot the I's because, again, I know people. And I knew that the first thing that was going to be thrown out there, outside of any other personal attacks against me, was then going to be the deal has to be illegal.
Right. There's some sort of loophole or because it's never been done before, right? Like
Absolutely.
This is unprecedented.
It is absolutely novel. And because it's novel, the first thought is, well, then it must be illegal. It's not the first novel idea that I've thrown out there. Being here at this district, I think you know that. But I knew that would be a reaction. And so I needed to put that reaction to rest, which is why I sought out the opinion then of the one attorney who should be the most respected attorney in Arizona because we elected them to be our Arizona Attorney General. So I reached out to the Arizona Attorney General's office, and I got them in touch with our legal counsel who was helping to draft the deal, and I let them know I need your blessing. I need you to look over this deal. If you have any questions on this deal, feel free to ask me. And at the end of the day, I need to know that you find no wrongdoing. I explained my logic. I showed the statutes that I was using, and I was like, just because it hasn't been done in this way before, the statute doesn't prohibit it from being done this way. It's just that it hasn't. You haven't seen a district come forward and say, I want to lend another district $25 million through the vehicle of a lease purchase and leaseback agreement. So it was a novel idea, but the Attorney General looked it over and they're like, we concur. We don't see any wrongdoing in this agreement. So,
one more question for you about finances. How is it that our district has money like this that we can loan out? Isn't that money intended for our own?
It is, and it will be used on our own. So now instead of $25 million being used on our own, it will be $32 million that is used on our own once all the payments are made and within a few years from now when those payments are completed. Right now, when a district has money, it sits there with the treasurer, but you don't receive any interest for it. So it's about as good as putting it into your mattress. We don't get to invest it, because obviously there would be concerns about, well, what if a district makes a bad investment and now a district's in a hole because they made a bad investment? So we don't get to do anything with it. We're not even receiving interest on it. Like even any interest that's being earned, like that's not being returned to us in a spendable format. We don't get budget capacity for that. So we're getting the money, but we're not able to earn anything on the money. We since I came here, so when I originally came to the district, we had a $2 million budget balance carry forward. We're one of the lower paying districts in the state. And I told him, I was like, I need to do a bunch of things here. So I left my old district on a Friday. I started at Tolleson Union on a Saturday morning. I came to present to the governing board for a special session to do School Finance 101. I told the board, in your history, you've never called for a bond of more than $44 million. I need to call for one right now of $125. I need to move a few million over from capital over to M&O, and I need to clean up your prior 3 years because you have a few million that was miscalculated and you've lost some budget capacity before. And my name is Jeremy, and it's very nice to meet you. They said, you're the expert, whatever you think. Since that time, we've had 5 credit rating upgrades. We have the highest credit rating in the state. We've built up our budget balance, but we've also managed to double salaries for all of our staff. So now we are the best when it comes to paying teachers. We have the highest teacher salaries. So yes, through all that management and through the community support, the community has supported us every single year. They see us reinvesting the money right back into the community. They can see the new buildings. They can see that we're taking care of our staff, and they give us their confidence again for another year, and we reinvest it again and show them what we can do. So 9 straight years, we've passed a question at the ballot, and we've had very strong community support. So it's through that community support and the management and oversight of the governing board, as well as the finance office and all those others that are involved. It's the good management along with the community support that has led to our financial position.
And back to Isaac. How are they doing now?
It's still rough. They're in operation. I talked to receiver beforehand, and one of the first questions I heard was, if you do this deal for us, if Tolleson helps out Isaac, um, it doesn't change that we have a job to do, and the receiver has been at other districts before. I'm very familiar with the playbook. I've seen them, at Murphy, and a couple of other districts in the past. It's not a philosophy that's in line with my philosophy. When I look at an equation, I see an equation, and when people see an equation out of balance, they're quick to think expenses are exceeding revenue. Therefore, hurry up, cut expenses. That's not how I do things. I'm like, there's two ways to balance that equation. You could also increase revenue. There are things that you can do that are far more creative than just let's cut. But they are currently outsourcing and letting go some staff because they're gonna outsource some services. They're looking at closing a few schools. I'm going to give my governing board president credit for this one. She told me, she goes, well, if you know that that's probably still the path, what keeps them from just closing half the district schools? And I said, technically the deal on his face wouldn't. And she's like, well, how could it? I'm like, well, we could put in a default event. And we worked it out with legal. And like, we need a default event. We were trying to limit how many schools they can close. And the attorney asked, like, well, how many do you think is reasonable? I mean, if we're looking worst case scenario, I don't see why you'd have to close more than 2 schools. I know, like, I haven't been all the way into the books. I've seen a lot of it, but most of it's been service level. I'd have to actually be there. I never had a chance to be on site. And to actually get into their system and to actually look at the details. And some of the financial data that's been submitted to the state is not fully reliable. So I'm like, with just what I've seen, I could see an argument being made to possibly close 2. I absolutely cannot see why anyone would have to go more than 2. And so we put that in as a restriction. They couldn't close more than 2 schools. And they're doing that. They're closing 2 physical campuses, and the wording didn't say school; it said school site, which leads then to say physical. It gives the impression of a physical school. Didn't think about the online program, but they're looking at closing 2 physical school sites along with the online program. That, and there's been a bunch of other benefits that have been scaled back. That were things that were there for the community, childcare programs. It's been hard to watch because, from my perspective, I just felt like if I could have fully had the keys, I could have fixed all of that and minimized the pain to staff in the community. And that was what I was trying to explain to the state board. I kept saying there are a million ways to solve a math problem. But I can come in there with the lens of how do I solve this math problem while being respectful to everybody that lives in this community. Right now, it's been a cut after cut.
Thank you, Mr. Calles. Is there anything else that you would like to address specifically about this leaseback deal?
Not specifically on the leaseback, other than there's currently statutes moving forward now. So we have a bill that has been working its way through the House. So that bill that was originally designed to be we'll give you one payroll in exchange for getting rid of all the governing board members. It has been redesigned now. It looks at being retroactive. So since no one could come forward and prove the deal was illegal, they're trying to pass a bill that would say retroactively we want to make that deal illegal, which is a violation of the Constitution. You can't impair an existing contract with legislation. There's a severability clause in there, which technically on bills, you never put a severability clause, but a severability clause says if any portion of this is deemed illegal, the pieces that are legal still happen. You don't do that because legislation is already assumed to be severable. But there's a severability clause in there because they obviously know that a lot of pieces in there are illegal. So it's just disappointing to see the reaction on the back end from the political side of, instead of looking at it as how amazing that one district would want to step up and help another district and find a way to do that where they're still taking care of their own community, that the reaction is, how do we make this illegal? And how do we even go back in time and make that deal illegal, along with making it completely illegal going forward? Which their attempt at how they would make it illegal, if the day after this legislation becomes effective, we were in a position where we're trying to help somebody out in a similar manner, it would cause an extra step. They also don't have it structured in a way that it actually breaks anything. It's just going to cause an extra step. So that's disappointing. The whole concept that we have been going on with trying to race to the privatization of education, that's probably the most disappointing thing. So I'm gonna tell another story.
Okay.
All right. So I'm driving back from Houston with the family, right? So kids in the back, my wife's next to me. It is snowing as we're coming through New Mexico. Visibility's pretty bad. I'm driving. Everybody else is either taking a nap on a device, and they're all just fine, happy as can be, not worried about a thing. I am very intently watching the road, and out of nowhere in front of me is an elk, and a big one. And I'm going probably 65, and I had the reaction of quick swerve to the right, get around him, and quick swerve back to the left, get back on the road. Inside the vehicle, everybody's like, "What are you doing?" I'm like, "Did nobody really see that elk right now? That was a huge elk. We were about to plow straight into him. He was center cut on the Suburban." I'm like, "Did nobody?" And everybody's like, "No, we didn't see any elk. Are you okay? Are you tired? Do you need somebody else to drive?" I'm like, "I'm good. I don't know how you guys didn't see the elk." And then they went back to playing games and sleeping. It is easy to get wrapped up in other distractions, right? All of us every day, we're wrapped up in our distractions of everyday life, of what's important right now, get the kids to practice, make sure we go get some groceries. It is easy to get wrapped up in all these distractions of life and take for granted who's at the wheel. And as we are driving dangerously close to this cliff with public education, where we are seeing the possibility of it being dissolved and us going to a fully privatized education state, which does not look the way that people think it is, where it's like, oh, so all the schools will be like Brophy. That's not what it's going to look like with all privatized education. As we are driving close to that cliff, people need to start becoming more cognizant of who's at the wheel. And, that would be my only takeaway. We almost saw a school district dissolve. We almost hit that elk. I would hope that it would be a wake-up call for some people out there that we need to do something to save public education because it is worth saving.
Sounds like we have our next podcast episode lined up.
Oh, with so much work to do to get us there, I think we could do a dozen podcasts on it and have plenty of ideas on how we can improve, our public education system. And one other concept. I'm gonna leave you with one more story.
Okay, last one.
All right, last one. This is my final one. I want you to picture something. So, imagine you're in a race. It's through an obstacle course, right? You and your worst enemy. You and your worst enemy, you guys are going to race through an obstacle course, and there is a prize at the end. Whoever gets to the end of this obstacle course first, they're going to get a prize. You and your worst enemy, on your mark, get set, go. You're going through, there are parts of this obstacle course that you are very good at, and they're not. And vice versa, there are parts of it that they are very good at and you're not. There's some rope climbing. I used to be in the Army, so, I loved obstacle courses. But there's all these different things you got to do. You got to, you got to low crawl and everything else. So, like, you got all these different obstacles. And you guys are running as fast as you can because you are absolutely...
And you have the same goal.
You have the same goal. You're running as fast as you can. You're committed to making the best time that you can, competing against each other. And you're over there, wishing the worst for each other while you're trying to make your way through this obstacle course. And you get to the end, and boom, there's your time. And even if you won, let's say you won. You beat your worst enemy by 5 seconds. All right, great job. When you look back on it and you think of all those places you struggled, I want you to think, how much faster could you have completed that obstacle course if instead of running against your worst enemy, you were running with your best friend and they helped you. They helped you get above that obstacle that you were struggling to climb up. When you were stuck pulling on that rope and you couldn't quite reach the top and you had to keep trying 10 times, they helped you. They stuck their hand out. They pulled you up. And every time you hit a tough obstacle, they had a hand out to help you. The reason why public education has to succeed is because in public education, when you look at school districts collaborate. And collaboration will eat competition for breakfast every day of the week. And that is why it is a system that is worth saving.
Thank you. That's a wrap. Thank you for joining us today on the Education Exchange, where we aim to enlighten our parents and empower our students. And that's the end of our show. Thank you for listening. If you have questions, want more information, or would like to be a guest on the Education Exchange, please send us an email at podcast@tuhsd.org. Don't forget to hit that subscribe button, give us a like, and tune in next week to the Education Exchange. You can catch all episodes on your favorite streaming devices or directly at www.tuhsd.org/podcast.